All right, I'm a big fan of making things quickly and keeping it simple for you guys. So what I've done is just Googled a Studio Ghibli illustration that I really like, and I'm gonna start taking the colors here and create a gradient, okay? This gradient is gonna be used as basically our color palette. If you have great color, your illustration already looks 10 times better than if you didn't understand color theory and tried to do it on your own. So why did I create a gradient that looks like this? Because it kind of looks like a horizon, right? Or like if you make video games, it looks like a skybox. Now we can use these colors to inform us of what things are gonna look like as we come towards the camera. I like to start with very solid colors, so we're just gonna start with a solid base of blue here. We're gonna add in that dark gradient at the top here, very subtle. And then this light gradient right here at the base. And we're just gonna use some circles to create some clouds. Let's add some clouds behind this as well, using this color here. And these are gonna pour over into the sky up above, okay? Just like that. We're gonna create some very subtle and simple trees, okay? Now it helps if you start really big actually, and do like this. And then you add the detailing like this. And we're just gonna come forward. Again, we're still doing our trees. We'll worry about our grass in just a second. We're gonna have a beautiful field. Again, very large, just to create some very simple shapes, just to get an idea of the shaping of the tree line, and then go small again to add the details. All right, that looks good to me. There we go, that's it. I'm just gonna fill it in. Again, we're just using the pencil tool here to create some very simplistic shapes, okay? Coming forward, same sort of mentality here. Ooh, that looks great. Very, very good. Yep, just like that. And then one more towards the front. This is gonna be our foreground. Okay. Everything needs to look great in the abstract first, guys. I keep saying that because it's so important. I'm gonna just try and get some cool looking shapes here. All right, one final thing is I think we need some very subtle trees right about here. And I'm gonna blend that by just filling in this green here and then dropping its opacity down just about like that. And I think that is the final layer that we need. We're gonna go in and start adding detailing with brushes, okay? My custom brushes are below, totally free. Go ahead and download those brushes if you haven't, but I'm gonna go ahead and use my grass block-in brush. This is basically a magic brush. Click, 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 and you'll notice that it's creating some very subtle changes in the coloring here. Grab this color, we're gonna go smaller here. Maybe a little bit smaller than that, there we go. We're gonna use our fluff block-in brush and just slowly make the trees look a little bit more fluffy, okay? Now, for our clouds, we're actually gonna use a very large version of this brush, okay? So we're just gonna scale up like this and just make them look poofy and fluffy and soft, right? I'm gonna merge these layers together here. And we wanna keep them all separate, guys, because we wanna make sure that we have the ability to create some parallax, okay? So far, so good. To create a three-dimensional look to trees, what you can do is grab this darker color here and just punch some circles as if you were creating a new layer of trees, okay, just like that, okay? And then what you do is you actually mask that layer you just created and pretend that these trees in the background are actually filling over. See that? and sort of spilling over. You can even drop the opacity down to create some blends. Oh yeah. Sometimes you want this harsh, clean difference between the two. We can do some highlights using the same mentality, okay? So I'm gonna grab this color here, and I'm just gonna punch in some highlights here. If they don't look good, don't worry. What we're gonna do is, again, mask those out to create a rounded look. I'm gonna do a full opacity of the mask. There we go, and we can just punch. I'm gonna drop the opacity down. One final thing to create some distinction between this layer and that layer is I'm just going to just add a very subtle, doesn't look subtle now, but just drop the opacity down. Distinction between the two, okay? One more. So that looks great. We're gonna apply the same principles to this tree line in the back. Now with clouds, you can make clouds look really, really cool with the same thought process as the trees. I feel like this layer needs a little bit more highlights. Let's go ahead and clean up our layers. So I'm just gonna merge all of the detailing. All right, so we're gonna get this color here, and we're gonna make it a lot more vibrant, okay? And I'm gonna use my grass block-in brush here, and I'm going to start adding some highlights to this ridge here. I can't overstate how important it is to have a second monitor to just look at your illustration in a different context, okay? I'm just gonna try and mimic a very subtle highlight here, okay? We can do another layer with just some kisses of light. All right, so it looks like the sun is really hitting pretty hard here. And so I think we could get away with adding some detailed grass, okay? Some vibrant detailed grass. So I'm gonna pick the yellow here, the yellowish green, and I'm gonna use this detail brush, this grass detail brush. And I'm just gonna add in some subtle grass details. Good. Okay, we could also add in some subtle highlights. There's a brush just for grass highlights, and we could do a vibrant, yellowy white. All right, the next layer up, let's go ahead and add some more detailing here. Okay, I think we could do some flowers. Okay, so I have this flower brush here, and we're gonna just use some red, okay? Some orangey red, just like that. Tiny little flowers. Just eyeballing it here. Nice. Okay. Add some drop shadow to it just to make it look like they're standing out just a little bit. But we also want there to be a nice little blend. So I'm going to drop the opacity down just like that. See? And let's give it some dimension. Okay. Let's come forward just a tad. Add a big one there. and here. We have one there, okay? And then using our pencil tool, just a tiny little white dot in the middle of the flower, just like that. Okay, so let's add just an extra highlight, and we can do this by simply using the effects. So let's go to our layer effects here, add an inner shadow. It's not actually a shadow though, it's just gonna be this subtle overlay of white. We're gonna do one more, okay? In this case, it's just a very subtle rim, just like that, okay? You can play with the angle and the opacity of it. And we're gonna click OK here. I'm gonna copy this layer style and I'm gonna paste it on every single layer. Just adding a subtle, subtle highlight to every single layer, even the clouds, Our grass layer here, okay, that one's a little intense. So I'm gonna drop that down, good. You could even do it to this layer here, okay. Some layers it doesn't look very good on, so we're not gonna do it on that layer. All right, so now we can just go ahead and add some pine trees. We have a pine tree brush here. And I'm just gonna add some behind this hill here. Right? And we're gonna add some coloring to the pine trees, right? So let's go ahead and take this color here, and we're gonna use the same pine tree brush to add in some color, okay? Maybe drop that opacity down a little bit. And remember, the sun is coming from the right side here, okay? So we're gonna add just some very subtle details to the right side of the tree to mimic that sunlight. All right, we're gonna use this color here, and we're also gonna use our grass block-in brush, and we're gonna be very careful here, but we're gonna add just some subtle shadows being cast by these trees. Drop the opacity down just a bit here. There we go. Same is true for this one. And now I've reached the point of, well, any illustration that I do for a video game, I just start to tweak, okay? Don't feel guilty once you get to the final point of your illustration and you feel like it's just not what you want, okay? And that's what happened in this illustration. It happens every time I'm doing an illustration. So here you can just see me trying out all these different things. I call this kind of like the Instagram filter moment, where you where you start adding filters and deleting stuff, adding fog, and then you'll see I'll delete the fog. I'm adding some Gaussian blur to the foreground to make it look a little bit more like Hollow Knight. And then I'm just tweaking the hue, the saturation of the layers, making it look a little bit more moody, a little bit more interesting. The original color looked great, but it wasn't the style I think that most of my games have. You can also see I've added a foreground here, just using that same pine tree brush. And I'm just tweaking and changing all of these colors here. This process is really difficult to define for you and give you a tutorial. All I'll say is that it is a guess and check process of slowly adding and tweaking stuff. It's a mix of what we originally had with that original color palette, but a little bit more rainy. It looks kind of like maybe Scotland or Ireland. Very moody, but this is the end result. I can't emphasize enough how important that final session is of just making edits to the hue and saturation. And it's one of those things where you really have to practice, but that is the end result. Be sure to download these brushes below. They're totally free, and I really feel like they're gonna help you out a lot. And you can make something just like this with those brushes, and also just grabbing a color palette from some illustrators that you really like. All right, guys, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I'll talk to you later.